Hello everyone, good morning to all. Everything is good to start the class. Voice is audible clearly and also screen is visible. Yes. YouTube guys, can you please respond to the chat box? Hello everyone, good morning to all. Okay. Okay, so it's time to start the class. Till now, today is Sunday, right? Okay. Okay. So in today's class, we are going to discuss what is composite function and how we can find the domain and range of composite function. Okay. And also, secondly and finally, we'll see what is inverse function, how a function will be invertible, when a function is invertible, and also we'll see some properties of inverse functions, right? Okay. Hello, Keval. Is everything okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Everything is good.
Chalo. So let's start from composite function. So all of you know what is function, right? Just a minute. What is it? Okay. So let's start with composite function. So all of you know what is function, right? Let's see what is composite function. Okay. Composite functions means composition of two functions, right? If you have two functions, like if you have two functions f and g, okay, suppose you are having two function f of x and g of x, right? Okay, so how we will get composite functions by using these two functions? Take, already I told you, functions working as a machine. It's a mathematical machine, right? You will give some input this function and it will give you some outputs, right? So composite functions means, suppose these are two functions. This is my first function, that is g. Here it's written as g of x. Okay, g of x. This is my first machine and this is my second machine, which is f of x. Clear? Okay, so if I'll give some input, the first message, that is, if I'll let's say I'm taking x naught, I'm giving x naught as input to g of x, to the first message. So what is the output you will get? We'll get g of x naught. Yes or no? Okay, is it or not? So you will get output as g of x naught. Okay, so you have another machine or another function, that is f of x. So what will happen if we'll give this g of x naught as input to the second machine? Okay, if I'll give the input as g of x naught to the function f of x, so what is the output you will get? So in place of x, you are putting g of x naught, right? So what you will get? You will get g of f of, sorry. You will get f of g of x naught. Is it or not? What is the output you will get? F of g of x naught you will get, right? So this is my input and this is my output. Okay, so what you are getting? F of g of x naught. So in generally, we can write the composition of two functions f and g. We can write this as f of g of x. What is the new functions? That means directly what are happening in between these two machines, will not bother about it. Okay, so what you are giving as the input, and what you are getting, that is important. That those things are important for me, right? So when you are giving input as x naught, you are getting the output as f of g of x naught, right? So my function is f of, my function becomes here f of g of x, and when you are giving x naught as input, you are getting f of g of x naught as output. Is it clear to everyone? This is called my composite function. F of g of x is known as my it's a composite function, nothing else. And another thing you can understand here, g of x, when you are giving input g of x as x naught, okay, suppose sorry, g of x को मैं कुछ भी इनपुट दे दूं, सपोज मैं x3 दे दिया, फॉर which g of x will not work. g of x मुझे बोलेगा कि भाई मुझे ये जो x3 है ना, मुझे चाहिए ही नहीं, मेरे को ये चाहिए ही नहीं, मतलब x3 will not work in what? G of x. Then also this f of x will say, f of g of x will say, no, I will not take this input, because if g of x is not taking this x3 as an input, so why f of x will take? Because ये फास्ट मशीन में ये काम ही नहीं कर रहा है भाई, ये फास्ट मशीन को चाहिए ही नहीं, तो सेकेंड मशीन कैसे ले लेगा? क्योंकि फास्ट मशीन के अंदर जाएगा तभी तो तुम्हें g of some आउटपुट मिलेगा, एंड जो आउटपुट मिलेगा दैट विल बी कमिंग इनटू f of x, एंड देन यू विल गेट द आउटपुट, राइट? सो अगर g of x का डोमेन में कोई भी नहीं है तो वो कंपोजिट फंक्शन, और दैट इज f of x का डोमेन में भी नहीं रहेगा, दैट इज f of g of x में भी डोमेन में नहीं रहेगा. इज दैट क्लियर टू एवरीवन? क्लियर? ओके, let's take an example. Suppose here I'm giving, suppose my function is g of x, I'm taking, this is x square, okay? So I'm giving one input, that is, suppose x I'm taking, that is x is equal to -2. So g of -2 will give you 4, yes or no? 4. Now I'm taking another function f of x, which is, suppose I'm taking, this is 2x minus 3, right? 2x minus 3. So what we will get when we'll give the input 4 to f of x? This is important, है ना? So let's see, if I'll be giving 4 as input to f of x, what you are getting? 2 into 4 minus 3, that is 8 minus 3, that is 5. Yes or no? Clear? ठीक है. So similarly here you can see another thing, that is f of g of x. What is f of g of x? G of x is x square and f of x is 2x minus 3, right? Here g of x becomes your input. So after putting in this machine, after putting x naught, what you are getting? G of x naught. G of x naught is the output of g of x, but here g of x again becomes input to the f of x, right? So g of x is your input. So what is f of x? F of x is 2x minus 3. So 2, in place of x you are having g of x. So in place of x we will write g of x, right? 2 into g of x minus 3. Is it or not? 2x, 2 into g of x minus 3. So if I'll take in place of, directly if I'll give the input, that is f of g of minus 2, right? So what will happen? F of g of minus 2, that is 2 into, in place of g of x I am putting g of minus 2. So g of minus 2 is 4 minus 3, that is 5. Again you are getting same 5 or not? So this is my composite function f of g of x, okay? And we can say here the composition of two functions, that is f and g. So when you are giving some input to g of x, you are getting some output, right? That is 0. Suppose you are giving x naught to the input to the g of x, and you are getting g of x naught as your output, and again you are giving input g of x naught to f of x, and you are getting f of g of x naught as your output, right? And here this f of g of x is known as my composite function. Clear everyone? So simple thing to connect, to directly connect this g of x or x naught, this input to g f of g of x, right? Simply to connect g of x with f of g of x. What you are having or what is happening in between these two machines, we are not going through it. Directly when you are giving input x naught, we are getting output as f of g of x naught. Okay? By using the composite function. Again, you can say, sir, if we'll take another function and we'll give input f of g of x naught to that function, then you will get another composite function. Yes, obviously. Okay? So this is all about your understanding of composite function. Let's move to arrow diagram of composite function. Simple thing, what you have discussed already, that is mentioned on your screen by the diagram. Okay, suppose you are having two function f which is mapping from a to b and g which is mapping from b to c. यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? ठीक है, see, f is mapping from a to b. When you are giving input x to f of x, you are getting f of x. So again, what is the output you are getting? You need to give to g. So when we are giving f of x as input to g, we are getting g of f of x, right? What you are having? G of f of x. So what is happening? Instead of going through a to b, then b to c, we can directly going from a to c directly by using composite function. So this is my composite function g of f of x, और shortcut है उसका g of f of x. We can write this as gof. Okay, similarly f of g of x, we can write this as fog. Gof x or gof of x or fog of x, we can write, right? So simply instead of going from a to b and b to c, we are directly going from a to c. We are directly connecting from a to c. That is my composite function here. Is it clear to everyone, guys? So when, remember, the important thing is here, a का जो भी डोमेन होगा, ठीक है, मतलब f of x की जो भी डोमेन होगा, ठीक है, वो after giving the input, those inputs after giving to f of x, what you are getting, that is your output as f of x, and those outputs will be your input for g of x again. Okay, so when some elements or some numbers or something does not belongs to the domain of the function f of x, then it will not be belongs to the domain of g of f of x also. Is that clear, everyone? Okay, okay, chalo, this is all about your what is that, composite function. So let's understand these things by taking examples. Okay, so if the function f is mapping from R to R is given as this, and g is the function which is R to R, which is given as this. Okay, so you need to find f of g of x and g of f x. Very simple, है ना? Fog or gof. That is, fog means f of g of x, right? Which can be written as, what is g of x? Here it is given as 2x minus 3. What is f of x? X square plus 3x plus 1. So x square, in place of x, what we'll write? We'll write 2x. Okay, let's simplify first. G of x is your input. That is, in place of x, we'll write g of x square plus 3 into g of x. Okay, plus 1. So that is g of x square, that is 2x minus 3 whole square plus 3 into 2x minus 3 plus 1. So if we'll simplify it, what you will get? 4x square plus 9 minus 12x plus 6 plus 6x minus 9 plus 1. है ना? So 9 minus 9 plus 9 will be cancelled out. 4x square minus 12x plus 6x, that is plus 6x plus 1 is your function f of g of x becomes 4x square plus 6x plus 1. Similarly, you can find GOF also. So what is GOF? That is g of f of x. Okay, g of f of x. That is, we can write here f of x becomes your input, right? So instead of x, we'll write f of x, 2 into f of x minus 3. So 2 into, in place of f of x, we'll write x square plus 3x plus 1 minus 3, and you will simplify it. What you will get, that is the GOF. So this will be 2x square plus 6x plus 2 minus 3. That is 2x square plus 6x minus 1 is your GOF, or g of f of x. Clear, everyone? Clear? Yes. So this is my GOF and this is my form. Okay. Let's move. Now, if next question is f be a greatest integer function and g be an absolute value functions. So f is given as greatest integer function, that is this. Okay, and g is given as g of x, which is absolute value function or modulus function. Okay, so find the value of fog of -3/2 plus GOF of 4/3. Chalo, let's find. So first, before finding this, first find f of g of x or fog. So what is fog here? We are getting fog is actually f of g of x, right? So g of x. Okay. So f of g of x, here g of x is your input, right? So instead of x, in greatest integer function of x, instead of x, we'll write absolute value of x or greatest integer of modulus of x, right? Okay. Okay. So this is my fog. Similarly, you can find GOF. Okay. So what is GOF? G of f of x, right? G of f of x. So instead of this x, so g of x is given as absolute value of x. So in absolute value of x, in place of x, we need to write greatest integer of function of x. Now find fog of -3/2, which is greatest integer of modulus of -3/2, that is greatest integer of, sorry, plus 3/2, which is 1 point, greatest integer of 1 point something, which is 1. Okay, so fog of -3/2 you are getting, that is 1. G of f of x of 4/3. Okay, now find modulus of greatest integer of 4/3. Okay, so 4/3, greatest integer of 4/3 is 1. So modulus of 1 is also 1. So fog of -3/2 plus GOF of 4/3 is equal to 1 plus 1, which is 2. Clear, everyone? Very simple question. Yes or no? Clear or not? Clear? Okay. Is there any doubt? You can ask. अगर कोई डाउट है इसमें तो पूछ सकते हो. ठीक है? बोलो, इसमें कोई डाउट है? ओके, चलो ठीक है. Let's move. Now another question in front of you. Try to find the f of x or f of x or f of x. Okay, find this function. What it will be? है ना? F is mapping from R to R. ZNB Dahod 1. Yes. Okay. ठीक है? चलो. Fine. What is the answer? What is the answer you are getting? Let's respond in the chat box. Everyone, please. जल्दी बताओ यार. अच्छा. Did you solve it? Did you solve it? yes or no? चलो ठीक है, let's see f of x, which is, we can write this here 3 minus, in place of x will write f of x, that is f of x ka cube whole to the power 1/3. Is it or not? Yes. So in place of f of x, now we can write 3 minus in place of f of x will write again 3 minus x cube to the power 1/3 whole to the power 1/3. Sorry. Okay. What do we write? In place of x, we'll write 3 minus x cube whole to the power 1/3, right? Right. 1/3 is your function. In place of f of x, you have written, and again whole cube. Is it or not? Right. Now simplify it. You will get 3 minus this 3, this cube will be cancel out each other. 1/3 into 3 is 1. So 3 minus x cube, you are having this whole to the power 1/3. And what you are having? 3 will be cancel out, and you are getting x cube to the power 1/3. So simply x you are getting, it is your f of, correct answer is A, and f of x becomes, that is x. Clear everyone? Identity function you are getting. Clear? Simple है ना? है कि नहीं? चलो ठीक है, it is clear. Let's move to next thing. How we can find the domain and range of composite function? It is important. Let's understand this. How we can find the domain and range of composite function? ठीक है? You can see two arrow diagram present on your screen. That one function is f of x and another function of is g of x, right? Okay, ठीक है. And I am asking to find the domain and range of g of f of x. Find the domain and range of g of f of x. How we can find? This is important, right? How we can find actually? Okay, so simple. Acha. So in the function f of x, there are some inputs. There is a domain and also there is a range. Okay. So when we are making composition of g and f, or composite function g of f of x, that means after putting all these outputs, after putting the outputs of, sorry, the inputs of f of x in f, you are getting the outputs of f of x. Okay. So then what are the outputs of f of x you are getting? Those you will put again into g of x. So after putting the outputs of f of x into g of x, what you are getting, that is the range of, that will be the range of g of f of x. So how we can find the domain? This is important. How we can find the domain? So let's see. Here I am taking g of f of x. Suppose I am taking here f of x as 1. Okay, I am taking f of x is 1. So after putting f of x is 1, so f of x is 1. So sorry, I am taking x is equal to 1, right? X is equal to 1 when we'll take, what we will get? G of f of 1, right? So f of 1 is a, right? F of 1 is a, because after putting in f of x, when you are putting 1, you are getting a. So f of 1 is a. F of 1 is a. So in place of f of 1, we can write a. So g of a. Now find g of a. G of a is what? in g of x, you can see a is mapping towards y, or y is mapping to a, or a is mapping to y, right? So we can write here in place of g of a, we can write a y. So similarly we can take, so 1, when we are putting 1, when we are putting 1, we are getting output was y. When you are putting 2, what you are getting? When you are putting 2, when you are giving the input to 2 as input to f of x, what you are getting? C. So C. Then again we are giving input C to g of x. So after giving C as input to g of x, what you are getting as output? That is z. So C, after giving C as input to g of x, you are getting z. So z is your output. Similarly, here also, when 3, we are taking 3. Suppose we'll give 3 as input. So when you are giving 3 as input, what is the output you are getting? In f of x, you are getting C. So in g of x, what you are getting? That is z. Also, again, we are getting z, right? So let's now take 4. 4 is mapping to E in f of x. Okay. And again, E is present in g of x. Yes or no? In the domain. So now E becomes the, now see, E is output of F. Okay. E is output of X, but E does not belongs to what? Domain of G. G बोल रहा है कि भाई जो E है ना, E के लिए मेरे पास कुछ काम ही नहीं है, मतलब E मुझे चाहिए ही नहीं, क्योंकि मेरे अंदर E का कुछ काम ही नहीं है, E काम ही नहीं करेगा भाई, E will not work inside me. ठीक है, तो बोल रहा है कि I will not work with E because I don't need E. ठीक है, E मेरे पास, मेरे मशीन में जो G जो मशीन है, G मशीन बोल रहा है कि ये जो इनपुट E है मुझे चाहिए ही नहीं. ठीक है, सो 4 तो ये इनपुट हो ही नहीं सकता G ऑफ f ऑफ x के लिए, राइट? G ऑफ f ऑफ x के लिए ये जो 4 है, दैट 4 विल नॉट ए इनपुट फॉर G ऑफ f ऑफ x. Understood or not? Simply now take 5. Similarly, we will take 5. 5 is mapping to D in f of x. So now again D is mapping to W in G of x, that is W. ठीक है, so now tell me what is the domain here we are getting? So domain of G of x, so domain of G of f of x, sorry, G of f of x का domain क्या मिला मुझे? That is 1 2 3 5. 1 2 3 5. And what is range? Range we are getting, that is range is y z w, y z w. Understood or not? Is that clear to everyone, guys? Clear everyone? Clear है कि नहीं? जल्दी बोलो. Is it clear to all? So what we are doing, remember the main focus is to find the domain and range of a composite function. Okay. So first we need to find the domain of f of x, right? Need to find, first find domain of f of x. Okay. So domain, अगर f of x की डोमेन में कोई एलिमेंट नहीं है और वो एलिमेंट को तुम ले लिए, ठीक है, if you are taking an element outside of the domain of f of x, then that element will not be a part of domain of G of f of x also. ठीक है, if it is not working for f of x, then it will not be working for G of f of x. Okay, why? Because f of x ही मना कर देता है ना, f of x is not allowing that element outside of the domain of f of x. Okay, if f of x is not allowing, so how G of x will allow? Because domain of G of x is output of f of x, right? Domain of G of x is output of f of x. Is that clear? So domain of f of x, find out करो. To find the domain of g of f of x, first find domain of f of x. Okay, then you will get some output of f of x. Okay, and after getting all the outputs of f of x, then put those outputs as input in g of x. Okay, so also g of x is one function. Yes or no? G of x is one function. So find the domain of g of x. Domain of g of x. Okay, so sometimes or many times you will get some outputs of f of x. Those elements will not be working in domain of g of x also, because g of x is another function. ठीक है ना? Okay, clear or not? So let's solve one example. You will understand this concept very well. Okay, let's take an example to understand this concept first. Here one example you have on your screen. You need to find the domain of the function f of x and g of x. Right, here you need to find the domain of f of x and g of x. So domain of fog and gov. Right, f of x is given and g of x is given. Right, okay, now first find f of g of x or fog x. Fog is f of g of x. Right, so first we'll find f of g of x. So x minus 2 divided by x plus 2 divided by, in place of x will give the input as x minus 2 upon x plus 1. Right, simplify it. So we'll get x minus 2 plus 2x divided by x minus 2 plus x divided by x. So x will be cancelled out. What you are getting? So this will be x minus 2 divided by x minus 2 divided by minus 2. Is it or not? Okay, this is 3x. 3x minus 2 divided by minus 2 you are getting. So fog we have we got fog as 3x minus 2 divided by minus 2. Right, so how we can find the domain of fog? So first we'll find the domain of f, because अगर domain of f की domain में नहीं है तो वो fog भी domain में भी नहीं रहेगा. So domain of f of x. What is domain of f of x? X plus 2 divided by x minus 2. So domain of f of x will be r minus 1. Right, r minus 1. Okay, so we got domain of f of x. So first we should find domain of g of x. Okay, we got the domain of f of x as r minus 1. Right, then find the domain of g of x. जल्दी से करना पड़ेगा भाई. g of x की domain क्या होता है? That is, here we got r minus 0, because at x is equal to 0, g of x is not defined. Right, so r minus 0 is the domain of g of x. Right, if 0 does not belongs to the domain of g of x, it will not also belongs to the domain of fog of x. Yes or no? Because अगर वो g of x की domain में नहीं है तो वो fog की domain में भी नहीं रहेगा ना. यहाँ पे हम लोग देख लिए ऑलरेडी. अगर ये यहाँ पे जैसे देखे कि अगर ये कोई भी एलिमेंट f के लिए काम नहीं कर रहा है तो वो g के लिए भी काम नहीं करेगा. ठीक है, तो सिमिलरली हियर अगर g of x का डोमेन में कोई भी एलिमेंट नहीं है, दैट विल नॉट बी वर्किंग फॉर फॉग आल्सो. f के लिए भी काम नहीं करेगा और फॉग के लिए भी मैं बोल सकता हूँ. ठीक है, ओके, नाउ फाइंड द डोमेन ऑफ f of x. ऑलरेडी वी गॉट इट, दैट इज r माइनस ऑफ माइनस 1. ठीक है, r माइनस ऑफ माइनस 1. वो बोल रहा है कि डोमेन ऑफ f इज r माइनस ऑफ माइनस 1. तो मैं अभी ये तुम्हें ये बोलने वाला हूं, देखो, सर्च एन एलिमेंट्स, सर्च एन इनपुट्स ऑफ g of x, राइट, ऑफ g of x, for which f of x becomes -1. ठीक है, what I am saying, it's little bit of confusion part. Let's understand first clearly, है ना? Search an element. Okay, search an element in G of X. Okay, of G of X for which f of X becomes -1. ठीक है, f of X becomes -1. अगर f of X becomes -1 हो ना, g of X की कोई भी एलिमेंट के लिए अगर f of X -1 हो रहा है, क्योंकि f of X की डोमेन में ही हाँ, कैन यू एक्सप्लेन फॉग अगेन? JNB Pune. Okay, fog is f of g of x. Okay, so in g of x is your input here. So what is f of x? X plus 2 by x plus 1. So in place in f of x, in place of x we'll write g of x plus 2 divided by g of x plus 1. What is g of x? G of x is x minus 2 by x, and here and in place of g of x just put x minus 2 by x, x minus 2 by x. So after taking LCM, x minus 2 plus 2x by x and x minus 2 plus x by x, right? So this acha sorry guys. Okay, so here we are getting the what are you getting? 2x है ना, 2x minus 2 ना, 2x minus 2 we are getting fog. Okay, fog we are getting, that is 2x minus 2 we are getting. Is it or not now? Clear? Okay, sorry. Okay, now see, if, right, sorry, come to the point. Okay, now a domain of f of x is r minus of -1. So what I am saying, g of x की ऐसा कोई एलिमेंट खोजो, ठीक है, ढूंढो जिसके लिए f of x -1 बन जाए. ठीक है, अगर वो एलिमेंट के लिए f of x ना -1 हो रहा है, तो वो एलिमेंट भी डोमेन ऑफ फॉग में नहीं रहेगा. ठीक है, क्योंकि यहाँ पे देखो ना, इसमें देखो, मैं ये बोल रहा था कि अगर f of x कि आउटपुट में ऐसा कोई एलिमेंट तुम्हें मिले जो g of x की डोमेन में नहीं रहेगा, ठीक है, देन दैट एलिमेंट इज आल्सो नॉट बिलोंग्स टू द डोमेन ऑफ हियर g of f of x. ठीक है, तो सिमिलरली हियर आल्सो we'll get the domain. How? Search an elements in g of x for which f of x becomes -1. If you are getting for that element does also not belongs to the domain of f of g of x. So that means how we can find? We'll find in this way. So g of x is not equal to 0. Sorry, g of x is not equal to -1. है ना? So what is g of x here? It is x minus 2 by x is not equal to -1. So we are getting here x minus 2 is not equal to minus x. Okay, x minus 2 we are getting, that is minus x. So similarly, let's move. Okay, we got x minus 2 is not equal to minus x. So 2x is not equal to -2 and x is not equal to -1, right? So x is not equal to -1. Now we can say domain of fog. Domain of fog will be r minus, you can see here, r minus, एक तो g of x की डोमेन में क्या है? 0 नहीं है. r minus 0 and -1. Clear everyone? Clear or not? Let me know in the chat box everyone. r minus 0 -1. Clear? Yes, jaldi bolo. Okay, if it is clear, similarly we can find also the domain of g of f of x. Now find first g of f of x. What is that? G is given as x minus 2 by x. So in place of x, we'll write f of x minus 2 by f of x. So this becomes x plus 2 by x plus 1, x plus 2 by x plus 1 minus 2 by x plus 2 by x plus 1. Simplify it, you will get log of x. So how we can find the domain? Okay, simplify it, you will get the GOF or G of f of x. So how we can find the domain? So first rule is domain के लिए, domain of GOF के लिए, find first domain of f. Domain of f already we got, that is here already we got domain of f is r minus minus 1, and then find domain of g. Domain of g of x, that is r minus 0. So how we can find domain of GOF? Domain of f of x is r minus minus 1, right? minus 1, ये तो मुझे पता चल जाएगा कि minus 1 जो है that is not belongs to the domain of GOF. Similarly, domain of G, okay, so मुझे ये find out करना है, search such an element in f, search such an element in f of x for which g of x becomes what? G of x becomes 0, right? That means here we'll take, here what we'll take? We'll take f of x is not equal to 0. So f of x is not equal to 0. That means my function here, if we'll calculate x plus 2 divided by x plus 1 is not equal to 0. That is x is not equal to minus 1. So domain क्या हो जाएगा ना? Domain will be r minus 0 minus 1. r minus 0 minus 1. ठीक है? When is it or not? Yeah. ठीक है? ये तो हो गया. फिर sorry, we did some mistake, I think. If we'll calculate it, let's see, calculate it. If we'll calculate it, what we are getting, we'll get x plus 2 is not equal to 0. So x is not equal to minus 2, right? So domain of g of f of x will be r minus, एक तो 0 मुझे, 0 does not belongs to the domain of sorry, minus 1 does not belongs to the domain of f of x, g of f of x, right? So minus 1 minus 2. So domain of GOF is minus 1, r minus minus 1 minus 2. Okay, so this is the domain of GOF. Now, okay, now we'll understand what is inverse function. Okay, what is inverse function? I hope the previous concept was clear to everyone, because we don't have time. I'm not spending more time on these things. Okay, inverse function. What is inverse function? So f, okay, here on your screen, f of x is a function. It is given by the arrow diagram. Okay, so domain of f of x, a, b, c, d, and codomain and range of f of x are given. Okay, so can you tell me what kind of function you are getting on your screen? What kind of functions you are getting on your screen? Is it 1, 1? Yes, is it 1 1? It is 1 1 because all the elements of f of x are mapping to different elements of second set of f of x. Okay, ठीक है? So it is 1 1. ये 1 1 तो हो गया भाई. Let's understand the definition of ये तो 1 1 हो गया. Let's check for onto. Yes, it is onto because codomain is x y z w and also range is x y z w. तो ये onto v हो गया. Okay, so this function is 1 1 and also it is onto. Right, this is 1 1 and also it is onto. Okay, so what is inverse of this function? How we can find the inverse of this function and when this function can be invertible? This is important, right? Okay, so inverse function, basically we can write this function as, suppose g of x is the inverse of f of x, so we can write this as g of x is f inverse of x. So don't understand or don't take this f inverse of x as 1 by f of x. It is not equal to 1 by f of x. Okay, f inverse of x, it's a notation for inverse function, that is inverse of f of x can be denoted as or can be written as f inverse of x. So here I have taken g of x as inverse of f of x and g of x can be written as f inverse of x. Okay, clear everyone? Okay, now tell me, okay, this function is 1 1 and also this function is onto. Okay, inverse, what is inverse? Inverse means here f is mapping from a to b. Okay, f is mapping from a to b and inverse is actually mapping reverse. Okay, reversely. Okay, how? Here g of x is the inverse, so we can say g of x is mapping from b to a. This is my g of x or f inverse of x, and if g of x is inverse of f of x, then if g of x is inverse of f of x, then g of x must be mapping from b to a. That means the definition will be like this: g of x is said to be, g of x is said to be, which is mapping from a to b, sorry, b to a. Okay, is the inverse of f of x, which is mapping from a to b. Okay, so when actually, when we can say this g of x is inverse of f of x, so when g of x will be a, so this is the definition actually. If f of x is mapping from a to b, then g of x, if g of x is a function which is mapping from b to a, it will be called the domain, the inverse of f of x. And the most important condition is f of x, g of x is said to be, g of x is said to be invertible. F of x must be 1 1 and also onto. That means it must be bijective. It must be bijective. Okay, so inverse exists. Note karo, inverse exists if the function is bijective. Bijective means it must be 1 1 and onto. Okay, so you can ask, sir, if the function will not be 1 1, what will happen? If the function will not be 1 onto, what will happen? Let's see. Let's understand this thing also. It's very simple. Let's understand these things. Suppose I am taking another element in f of x. Okay, another element e in f of x. Okay, another element e in f of x, in a in f of x. Okay, and e is mapping to, suppose I am taking e is mapping to here again z. Okay, d is mapping to z and e is mapping to z, and I am telling you g of x is inverse of f of x, right? G of x is inverse of f of x. ठीक है, g of x is inverse of f of x. ठीक है, is it true? Is it true? No, it is not true. Why it is not true? Why it is not true? G is mapping from B to A is inverse of f is mapping from A to B. It is, this statement is not true. Why it is not true? You can see g of x, है ना? So for g of x, B becomes domain and A becomes range. B becomes domain and A becomes the codomain. ठीक है? So this is it a function when you are taking, this is suppose like this, for your understanding, I am taking this is my B, this is my A, and this is my G, okay, which is f inverse. For your understanding, this is my x, y, z, w, and in A, B, C, D, E. So x is mapping to C, y is mapping to A, okay, and z is mapping to D, and w, z is again mapping to D. Sorry, z is again mapping to E. E. Is it a function, guys? Tell me, is it a function? No. Why it is not a function? W is mapping to B. No problem. You can write. Okay. Is it a function? No. Here G is not a function. अगर ये फंक्शन ही नहीं हो रहा है तो ये किसी का इनवर्स कैसे होगा? If G is not a function, है ना? So it will not a inverse of f of x also. So why? See, why it is not a function? Because Z has two elements. Z has two images. So by the definition of function, actually, if you'll see the definition, if you'll remind the definition of function, it is violating the definition of function, right? So Z has two images. Z has two images. That one is D, another one is E. So in case of function, this rule is not allowed. In a function, okay, in the first set, none of the element must have क्या होना चाहिए? Must have no more than two elements, है ना? वो मतलब फर्स्ट सेट में ना, ये जो G के फंक्शन की डेफिनेशन क्या होता है? That is when we can say a relation will be a function. Now first set के elements, suppose here we can take, in the last example also we can take here we can say f of x is a function because all the elements of A in f of x are having unique images in set B. But here we are getting Z has different images in set A. That's why it is not a function. If G is not a function, it is not inverse of a function. Okay, so that's why must be f of x to be invertible. It's f of x to be invertible. F of x must be 1, 1. Similarly, also we can say another example. Also we can take when the function is not onto. When the function is not onto, suppose here I am taking another elements P. Okay, another elements P. So suppose I am taking G of x is the inverse of f of x. G of x is inverse of f of x. It is not true. Why it is not true? Because G of x is not a function. Like this. Here this is my B. This is my A. X, Y, Z, P, W, A, B, C, D. X is mapping to C. Y is mapping to A. And Z is mapping to D. Okay, and W is mapping to B. It is not a function. In this case also, it is not a function. right? In this case also, it is not a function. This G is mapping from B to A is not a function. Okay, it's not a function. That's why G is not inverse of F. Clear everyone? So you can see here the function is not onto, है ना? Not onto, because the range is not, since range is not equal to codomain, right? That's why this function is not onto, and here this function is not 1, 1. Why? Since this function is not 1, 1, since D and E has same image, that is Z. It's a many one function. It's a many one function, and this is into function. This is into function, right? So F to be invertible, F must be bijective. कोई भी फंक्शन को इन्वर्टिबल होने के लिए वो फंक्शन को बाइजेक्टिव होना जरूरी है. Is that clear to everyone? Any function to be invertible, that function must be bijective. Bijective means that function must be 1, 1 and also onto. Then that function will be invertible. Then the inverse of that function will be exist. Is that clear to everyone, guys? Clear? Let's respond to the chat box, everyone. Is that clear to all? Clear, everyone? Yes. देखो, when the function is not 1, 1, the function is not invertible. When the function is not onto, this function is not invertible also. Why? Here you can observe now, when we are taking here this function F is not onto, right? Why it is not onto? Because the codomain is not equal to range. Range is not equal to codomain. So P is the element which is present in the second set B in f of x, which has no pre-image in set A also, we can say. This is not onto. So that's why G of x, if you are taking G is the inverse of F, suppose you are, let you are taking G is the inverse of F, then G is not a function here. In this case, G is not representing to a function. If G of x is not a function, how it can be inverse of a function? है ना? ठीक है? So remember, the important thing is a function to be invertible, that function must be bijective. Clear? So how we can find inverse of a function, that we'll learn in the next class. So till then, bye bye, take care everyone. It's time to end your class now. Thank you all. If you have any doubt, you can ask. किसी को अगर कुछ डाउट है तो पूछ सकते हैं. टाटा.